Unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented TV. And hello again. Great to see you all. I'm Basil Valentine. Today is Tuesday, the 2nd of September, and welcome to another retitled program. Yes, we were the leading edge for a little while, and then I reverted to Countdown to give you numbered top stories of the day. But that is also the name of the first program ever transmitted on Channel 4 television. So doffing my cap to them. Today we are ascending order, same thing, ascending order of stories from my news edit so that you don't have to look elsewhere rather than take the propagandized version of what's important about what's going on in the world. Well, why not stick with me and have a genuinely independent view of world events? Now, I'm still hoping today for an outright exclusive with my good friend, Dr. Frank Romano, who I only discovered yesterday is actually the owner of the Handler boat, which was the second to attempt to break the siege of Gaza a few weeks ago. Frank was arrested and then deported. He was briefly on hunger strike. Some extraordinary stories about that. He told me that in Puglia in Italy, when they went to fill the water tanks, what was delivered instead was sulfuric acid. Yes, you couldn't make this up. This is like something from 1960s spy film or something. But the Handler, which obviously needed full tanks of water to set sail for showers, food preparation. Obviously, any boat requires water. They were about to fill the tanks with sulfuric acid when what was an obvious sabotage attempt was discovered. Undeterred, Frank has been at the center of the global flotilla, which in spite of bad weather is now setting sail first from Barcelona, then with additional boats from Tunis and other ports as well. And Frank should be joining me at around about the half-hour mark, but he is on board one of those boats. He'll be using a Starlink for the internet. And so far today, I haven't been able to reach him, which is hardly surprising. But I spoke to him only yesterday. He's very hale and hearty, I'm pleased to say. And this flotilla, now possibly more than 50 boats, is something Frank first envisaged over a year ago. He was part of the original flotilla, which was in Istanbul. They were planning on setting sail in March 2024 to break the siege of Gaza. Since then, of course, many people, we simply don't know how many, but I believe 8 more yesterday have died of starvation in the famine engineered by Israel, who threatened only yesterday to cut off what limited food supply there is into northern Gaza while they detonate any remaining structures and continue their genocidal evisceration. It has now been recognized as a genocide by the leading scholars authority on the subject. We'll have a report on that in a few minutes. But first, this report from Al Jazeera on the day's top story, the sailing of the Gaza Freedom Flotilla.
So hundreds of people from 44 countries are taking part in the mission to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. The Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg is among them. She was detained and deported by Israel after its military intercepted another flotilla heading for Gaza in June. Organizers say more boats are expected to join the mission next week, setting off from Tunisia and other Mediterranean ports. Well, joining us now from the flotilla boat is Taig Hickey. He's an Irish comedian and activist with the global Sumud Flotilla. Thanks for your time and for speaking to us. You leave in a few hours, Gaza-bound, of course. What's the mood like amongst you and your fellow flotilla members?
First of all, thanks for having me, guys, and apologies. I'm going to have to put my face a little bit close to here at times. So the mood is it's kind of quite determined, and it's actually really beautiful being part of something that's truly global. I mean, sometimes people feel like the solidarity is just in pockets, or it might just be amongst Arab people. Or there's 44 delegations here, and there's many people who have already been on attempts to break the siege before. And I think what's beautiful that they haven't been deterred by, having slander against them. Some of them have been attacked. They've been on boats that have literally been bombed by the Israelis. But there's a determination and a relentlessness to keep going. And I think that's what's exciting. And I feel like Israel has a real problem on its hands when the world really, truly unites. It feels like a humanity united, standing up against genocide and man-made starvation. And I think it's just shaming Western governments, particularly Western governments, that we are doing the bare minimum because the Western governments won't do the bare minimum, which is sanction this rogue state and to put some serious, meaningful diplomatic pressure on them to literally stop starving people to death.
Here's the thing, Tig. I mean, the flotilla's official purpose is to break the siege of Gaza, right? But we can say with almost certainty, and this is based on history and previous flotillas, that you will not break the siege and you will be intercepted by the Israeli military. So what you're doing to a large extent maybe symbolic and sending a message. Is that fair to say? Is that how you see it? And if so, what is that message you're sending and to whom?
I personally wouldn't frame it that way. I would frame it in a way of we are hoping and determined to set up a humanitarian corridor. That's what we're doing. We're not setting sail planning. Of course, we plan for all sorts of scenarios, but we're not thinking, it's not our goal or ambition to be intercepted, because that would be illegal. We're traveling in international waters. We're completely peaceful. It's a non-violent mission. And we're doing, as I say, the bare minimum to break the siege and bring humanitarian aid. Think baby formula to the Gaza Strip. These are unthinkable restrictions we've never seen the likes of in modern times. So our aim is to get to Gaza, and we're not heroes. We're not coming to save Gaza. In many ways, we're coming to save ourselves, to save our own humanity, because humanity is at an all low point right now in the world. We aim to set up a humanitarian corridor, and I think if we say you're going to probably get it intercepted, really, it's just symbolic, or what's the point? Then we kind of normalise the war crimes of the blockade. We normalise the war crimes of genocide and ethnic cleansing and starvation. So we're on the right side of history. We're in the right. We're peaceful. We just want to bring aid to Gaza. And I think that's what's normal. What's abnormal is that the Western governments particularly are not helping to do that. We need to remember that we're on the right side of history, and it's the governments of the world largely that are in the wrong.
I heard you speaking earlier at the press conference, and you said that this is not something that you would have chosen to do. So why do you feel like it's important for you personally to join this flotilla?
Well, yeah, I'm not a boats guy. As you can see, I'm struggling here with my big, bald, white Irish head. I've got three beautiful daughters. Two of them are very young. One is two years and a bit. The other's 14 weeks old. I don't necessarily want to be here. I'm not trying to come here to get selfies, as the likes of Piers Morgan might claim. We're here, again, we're doing the bare minimum because our government won't do the bare minimum. And the reason I'm here as well is because it's tough being away from my kids for 3 weeks or more. I'm going to miss them so much. It's going to break my heart. But it would be tougher in 10 years' time when my kids ask me, what did I do during the Gaza Holocaust? If I had to tell them, well, I didn't do enough. I was like my government. I just made pretty speeches, but I didn't take any meaningful action. The people are taking the meaningful action. And I believe that my children and myself are not better or worse than any other human being or any other child in the world. And I think if you have that mentality, you couldn't possibly allow man-made starvation and extermination to go on. If we encourage the feeling that no one's better than anyone else, because it's drilled into us, that the superiority is drilled into us, especially in white countries, that's what we need to work on. That's what we need to end, the dehumanization. So somebody said to me before I went, why do you have to go? And I said to them, well, why not me? Why not me? And the final word is, there's so many Irish here. What we would love to do is to not go at all. We'd love to go home if the Irish government just grew a spine, stopped allowing US warplanes in Shannon Airport to deliver weapons for the extermination, stop central banks from buying Israeli war bonds, and stop the roaring trade between Ireland and Israel, then we wouldn't have to be here.
Okay, well, we will certainly be following the path of the flotilla and the journey as you embark on it. Tig Hikiwe, thank you so much for joining us this hour from Barcelona.
Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Peace and love.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.
There we go. I believe we're back. Sorry about that. The stream broke. Anyway, of course, the Israelis are responding typically aggressively to this humanitarian initiative. The National Security Minister, the fascist Ben Gvir, has said he plans to designate the Global Sumud Flotilla activists as terrorists and seize the boats. Well, the Israelis are very good at stealing everything, as we know. So they're planning on stealing the boats as well. Activists will be held in prisons for terrorists and will be denied special privileges such as television, radio, and specialized food. He presented a plan to the cabinet aimed at halting the largest flotilla ever planned to sail to Gaza, comprising 50 ships with activists from 44 countries. This plan was presented at a discussion on Sunday morning regarding steps to stop the flotilla. He emphasized that despite its claimed humanitarian intentions, it will be regarded as an attempt to undermine Israel's sovereignty and support Hamas in Gaza. I mean, they're sailing to Gaza. It's got nothing to do with Israel's sovereignty. It is an attempt to obviously undermine Israel's genocidal war. That's a completely different matter from undermining Israel's sovereignty. Although I would venture to suggest that he will find a lot more people seeking to undermine Israel's sovereignty with it now well established that it's a genocidal pariah rogue state. Susan Sarandon, Liam Cunningham are two of the actors on board. I believe there are various other dignitaries and high-profile people sailing with the flotilla. So seeing them in jail for terrorism is going to be, well, at the very least, I would imagine rather embarrassing. And what a ludicrously inverted world it is we live in, where people seeking to bring humanitarian aid and break man-made famine are regarded as, well, at least by the Israelis, as terrorists. I mean, it's utterly obscene. Of course it is. It's repulsive. I wonder what the UK government will have to say about it. Supposedly we're due to recognize a Palestinian state in the not too distant future. Likewise, Belgium, I believe. We've got the UN's General Assembly meeting coming up later this month, and this report from Al Jazeera gives some insight into Belgium's preparations for it.
Well, Belgium's foreign minister says his country will join the UK, France, Canada, and Australia in recognizing Palestinian statehood at the UN General Assembly next week. Maxime Prévost says firm sanctions will be imposed on Israel, including a ban on imports from illegal settlements. But he said this will only be formalized once Hamas releases all of the captives and no longer governs Gaza. 147 UN member states have already recognized the Palestinian state. This includes most of the global south, as well as Russia, China, and India. Israel's war on Gaza prompted more countries to join them. Another 10, including Mexico, Ireland, Norway, and Spain, formally recognized Palestine. In 2012, the UN General Assembly upgraded Palestine from a non-member observer entity to a non-member state. And then 2 years ago, the Assembly overwhelmingly backed its bid for full membership. But the U.S. has repeatedly blocked the move at the UN Security Council. Tamer Kharmout is with us. He's an associate professor at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Thanks so much for coming in. So we're seeing this push for recognition of a Palestinian state. As I was just saying, Belgium is the latest one. I mean, this is significant, or how do you see this?
Of course, significant, and it's in the right direction. But the problem is, time is not on the Palestinian side, especially that when we have this perfect alignment between the American administration and the Israeli government now. I mean, they're so united and fixated on achieving their goals in Gaza and in the West Bank. And I think these recognitions, if they are not accompanied with immediate actions to impose sanctions in Israel all types of sanctions, and also add more pressure on the U.S. as well. I mean, we want something like similar to the South African model when the apartheid regime was isolated by international sanctions. And when I say sanctions, real sanctions. If this does not happen immediately after these recognitions, I'm afraid time is not on the Palestinian side.
So that announcement by Belgium about them imposing sanctions only if Hamas doesn't govern is not enough.
There are so many ifs and preconditions. And again, it's not clear to many observers what are the benefits, the actual benefits for these recognitions for Palestinians? Yes, they're important, but they have to be followed by tangible, measurable actions. So if you recognize a state, then you establish an embassy, and then you realize that this state is facing a genocide, then you have to impose severe sanctions on the opposite side, Israel. So positions are good, decisions are good, statements are good, but what needs to follow is real measures on the ground that will help Palestinians, that will help stopping this massacring first, this genocide, and then more or less set a pathway for this establishment, for this state. How will it be created? On which parts of Palestine will be created? There still needs, there is some ambiguous parts of these recognitions that need to be more clarified. The people need more clarity on it.
Speaking of statements, the U.S. president has been speaking, and this is what he said. He said that Israel must end the war in Gaza. Israel may be winning the war, but in the international arena, Israel is losing. And he also added that Israel's influence in the U.S. Congress is weakening. And that's quite a statement from a U.S. president, isn't it?
Yes, and it's very important. And it hints of these important changes inside the U.S. if it comes to the public, to some congressmen, But again, that's Trump. Trump has been saying these things so many times, and similar things, similar matters even on Ukraine. But eventually, he's keeping Israel's lifeline, when it comes to military support, economic support. So the U.S. also has to more or less embrace Israel in a good way to stop it from this genocide. It needs to save Israel from the destiny it has put itself in. But we don't see this happening. So this is why when I say recognitions are important, public opinions are important. But again, Gaza, Israel now has started staging the next phase of the war on Gaza. If Gaza is fully destroyed, then there's nothing left practically from the Gaza Strip.
What do you think Israel is trying to achieve right now in Gaza? Because we know that it's trying to get into Gaza City, trying to seize it. But it's one thing to seize Gaza City. It's another thing to hold on to it, right? What's it trying to achieve?
Darine, we have the Rafah model in front of our eyes. Rafah, this is the third largest city in the Gaza Strip. It disappeared. It does not exist now. So Rafah, the city of Rafah, does not exist now. It's an empty piece of land that Israel controls, that has its troops on it. If that's the scenario waiting for Gaza, then it's horrifying. Because Gaza is literally the largest city in the Strip. It hosts more than 1 million people. If Gaza's destiny becomes like Rafah's destiny, then there is nothing left of Gaza. What's left is a small concentration camp for these 2 million Gazans awaiting for the next step by Israel, whether it's expelling them or I don't know. The Israelis have to answer for this. But so far as we talk, Israel has started bombarding Gaza as well. They are demolishing entire neighborhoods as we talk. And their plan is moving. And yes, we hear statements from Trump, but again, statements, yes. So these recognitions, again, very important, but has to be followed by immediate measures. So Israel feels the pain and isolation and pays for its crimes in the occupied territories.
Okay. Tamer Kharmoud, thank you so much for your analysis
My
this
pleasure.
morning.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight.
And indeed, thanks to Al Jazeera for that report to bring us up to date. Of course, although not widely reported, people are being murdered in Gaza every day. There were heavy airstrikes last night on people in tents, more people burnt alive. Absolutely horrific scenes, which I'm not going to show you because they are extremely distressing. Meanwhile, the horrific characters perpetrating this genocide, the likes of Isaac Herzog, the Israeli so-called president, he's traveling to the Vatican this week to meet Pope Leo XIV, who recently demanded that Israel stop its collective punishment of the population in Gaza. The visit is apparently being made at the invitation of the Pope, according to Herzog's office. The genocide heir will also meet the Vatican Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's chief diplomat, and will tour the Vatican archives and library. Well, I suggest they keep all those valuable and historic documents well locked up, because we all know the Israelis' record for thieving. Meanwhile, in a significant development, the world's biggest academic association of genocide scholars has passed a resolution saying the legal criteria have now been met to establish Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. 86% of those who voted amongst the 500-member International Association of Genocide Scholars backed the resolution, declaring Israel's policies and actions in Gaza had met the legal definition set out in Article 2 of the UN Convention on Genocide of 1948. Full details now in this report.
The world's leading genocide scholars have formally declared that Israel's war on Gaza meets the legal definition of genocide. The International Association of Genocide Scholars has passed a resolution saying Israel's actions match the definition of genocide set out by the United Nations. Joining us now to discuss this is Timothy Williams. Sir, you are the second vice president of the executive board of the International Association of Genocide Scholars. You're in Munich. So this is not a group, I think, that is widely known to the general public. Can you quickly explain who you are collectively?
Yes, we're a group of almost 500 scholars of genocide worldwide who study many different facets of genocide and many different cases of genocide. We, as a collective, we meet for scholarly discussions, but also one of the things that we do is we pass resolutions on historic and current cases of genocide when we see it happening, in order to try and make the public aware of cases that are happening. Obviously, in the case of Gaza, it's widely being discussed, but I think it's often a very politicized discussion. And so I hope that the International Association of Genocide Scholars commenting on this and passing a resolution will give some academic credentials to those who are claiming that it is genocide.
Yeah, we want to get to the substance and the academia of it. Just before I do that, do you know if you're the largest group of experts on genocide in the world? I'm not aware of another one, but I don't want to make an assumption.
There is another association, the International Network of Genocide Scholars, but I do believe we're slightly larger.
Okay.
But many of us are members of both associations.
Okay, so explain to us, I have your resolution, I've read it, it's 2.5 pages. Explain to us what makes the conflict in Gaza genocide, according to the vast majority of your 500 members, rather than just warfare.
So according to the UN Convention of Genocide, there needs to be an intent to destroy the targeted population, in this case, the Palestinian nation in Gaza. And there are 5 crimes that can be committed to do this. Killing members of the group, causing serious bodily harm, and deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring the physical destruction, and 2 other crimes as well. But in particular, these first 3 crimes, we do find considerable evidence for in Gaza. More than 59,000 people at the time the resolution was penned had been killed, 143,000 injured, and 2.3 million people displaced. And I think particularly importantly is also the deprivation of food and water and healthcare, which is creating mass starvation and will have an impact for years and decades to come. The destruction of arable land, food warehouses and bakeries, which hinders the production of food, and also a restriction of humanitarian aid, which means you don't need to just shoot someone for it to constitute genocide. Also depriving them of the conditions to have life also constitutes genocide.
So I think some people might listen to you and watch this interview and think, I think there might be 2 sets of reactions. Some people might think, well, why did it take you so long to call it genocide? 63,000 people have been killed. Others may think the opposite. This is unfair, maybe even biased. What do you say to both sets of viewers?
Yeah. To those who say that we're biased, I don't think that's the case. These resolution processes, we collate a lot of evidence, the people bringing the resolution, and the members in an anonymous vote on whether they think it's plausible or not that it meets the legal definition. Why now? In the end, it's because it takes a member or several members to come together and write a resolution that they believe that the membership will pass. And I think it's important that to stress that the members don't just pass any resolution, but that there's a high threshold for people and scholars of genocide saying that it is this. It's not a word which is just thrown around. The legal definition has meaning because it has very political consequences. And so I think it wasn't until midway through this year that a group of scholars thought that it was the right time to claim this. I think there's a lot of, for me personally, I didn't think it was a genocide in October 2023 or November 2023, but my thinking started changing hearing the statements of Israeli leading politicians and military personnel, and seeing the ongoing and escalationary dynamics on the ground. And I think now it's beyond question, and I think this was a ripe time for the association to come out and have this resolution and say that we believe that it does constitute the crime of genocide.
So your resolution says that, quote, international civil society has a responsibility to prevent genocide. Can you walk us through that? I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean all of us have a responsibility to stop genocide individually? We're all responsible for this and should do something to that end? And if so, is that a legal requirement?
It is not a legal requirement. There is a legal requirement on states to prevent genocide according to the Genocide Convention, and also a legal requirement to punish. There's no legal requirement on you or I as citizens of different countries to do this. But I think there is a moral obligation to do this and to put pressure on our governments to fulfill their obligations as states to the Genocide Convention. And for me personally, as an academic, as an intellectual, I see it as part of this, as a scholar, as speaking to you today, voting in the resolution process, as part of that, as a citizen, as part of my moral obligation. But really, the question is, what do states do? They're the ones who have the legal obligations, and they're the ones who have the power to make differences.
All right. Timothy Williams of the International Association of Genocide Scholars, thank you very much for joining us on Al Jazeera.
Don't miss out to get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera.
Of course, we've heard it before. We know that there's an obligation on states, as Timothy Williams said there, to prevent genocide and to punish the perpetrators. 86% of scholars in that august organization say it's genocide, so do Amnesty International. The International Criminal Court back in January of last year said that there was a plausible case for genocide. You only need to use your eyes to look at what's going on the ground. And yet what are states doing? Absolutely nothing. A threat to recognize a Palestinian state, which, as the speaker in the previous interview said, isn't actually going to do anything for the Palestinians being exterminated on the ground. Genocide denial. I don't like the term denial, really, bolted onto a noun in order to shut down debates. We have climate change denial and various other denials, But given that this is the most extreme humanitarian catastrophe, man-made catastrophe of our lifetimes, I do think we have to now increasingly call out those who are, as I saw in a tweet yesterday, you either have got to be a perpetrator of the genocide, a member of a government controlled by the perpetrators of the genocide, a journalist controlled by the perpetrators of the genocide, or a retard, not to say that a genocide is taking place. I wonder which category Bernie Sanders falls into. I would venture to suggest somewhere between retard and controlled by the state that's committing genocide. But nevertheless, he's starting to feel some pretty big pushback, as we can see now.
A little bit queasy, and What genocide? We've got to be careful about that word.
It is a genocide.
What's your definition of genocide?
Bernie, you have funded Zionism yourself. You have funded the Israeli settler state. Here you are, pretending you aren't. It is disgusting. Liar, liar, genocide denier. Liar, liar, genocide denier. It's disgusting. It is reprehensible. You are a child killer.
In your view, is what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide?
In my view, it is absolutely disgraceful, horrible, and I'm doing, as a United States Senator, everything I can to end it.
But do you buy the South African case at the International Court of Justice that what Israel is doing in Gaza constitutes genocide or genocidal acts?
I think, look, we can argue about definitions. It is horrible.
But if one agrees that it is a genocide, it means that other states have a legal right and duty to prevent genocidal acts being carried out.
But see, we can talk about that. But what does that mean? I mean, in real terms? Right now, what I am trying to do is what I think is probably maybe, and I can do it because I'm a senator, you can't. Right now, maybe, if we tell Mr. Netanyahu that he's not getting a check for $10 billion more to continue his aggressive action, he and his right-wing friends may decide it is not a good idea to continue to do that. So that's where I am coming from.
In addition to stopping the billions of dollars in military aid that Israel gets from the United States every year, would you back calls for a cultural, sporting, and economic boycott of Israel?
I am nervous about economic boycotts of any country, to be honest with you. But right now, what people want to do, they can do what they want to do. But right now, again, my job as a United States Senator, and I'm kind of leading that effort in the Senate, is to tell Netanyahu that he is not going to get any more U.S. aid.
Did you feel nervous about the boycott movement against apartheid South Africa? Was that a concern you had at the time?
What I thought that as an apartheid state at that point, it was important to put pressure. But people can do as they want, and that's all.
Do you think that it's right that British citizens and American citizens can go and fight in the IDF when, as you say, there are such profound humanitarian concerns in Gaza?
Well, I think if British and American people want to do that, I suppose they have the right to do it. It's not something that I've really thought a whole lot about.
Do you think they should have the right?
Look, I think what the Israeli government doing now is horrible, and I'm not quite sure why people would want to be, part of that effort.
I mean, you faced quite a lot of criticism recently.
I face criticism every day, no matter what you do, and that's my line of work, and I accept it.
Yeah, some barracking over this word, over the whole word about genocide.
People are talking about what constitutes genocide, all that stuff. Fine. Frankly, what we should be talking about is how we stop this damn war. Do you have an International Court of Justice which is defining what genocide means? What we can agree on, I certainly see, is a mass slaughter of women and children, which is unacceptable, which has got to end. And as a United States Senator, I am leading the effort in the Congress to make sure that Netanyahu doesn't get the money he needs to continue that effort. People think that's not good enough, or they want to argue about this word or that word. Fine, go do it. That's where the left is usually.
I mean, mass slaughter of people is a very strong way to express
well, that's
it.
What I think.
Absolutely. And yet, as you say, there is this argument about genocide. Is the difference between mass slaughter and genocide?
You tell me.
Numbers?
All right, talk about genocides. If I ask you historically about genocides, what would you say?
Well, I mean, Rwanda, Cambodia, the Holocaust, the Second World War.
Right.
So those are vastly bigger numbers.
That's right.
Than what we're talking about now.
Gaza's a smaller country. But why are we? That's what I would think when you talk about genocide, right?
You said you were uncomfortable with the word genocide.
Precisely because what I don't want to see is that word become something, 8 people like genocide. All right. It is a horrible. What more do you have to say?
Absolutely pathetic there from Bernie Sanders. I wonder whether the findings of the scholarly body will force him to change his mind. First of all, 60,000, well, it's a lot more than that. A lot of estimates put it more like 500,000 Gazans that have been murdered one way or another. Note too how he squirmed when Ash Sarkar of Novara Media there put him on the spot about the sanctions on South Africa, and he starts coming out with vague comments about, oh, people can do what they like and all this sort of stuff. It's really dismal. And yet he is theoretically at least one of the people on Capitol Hill with the most humanitarian position. The others, of course, absolutely drenched in Palestinian blood. We move on to our next story now on Ascending Order, and that's the elevation of Zach Polanski in the UK to the leadership of the Green Party, which now has 4 MPs, of course, is a rising force, currently polling around 10% in the polls. The Conservatives, in response to Polanski's election, have said that the party has been taken over by the hard left. Commenting on the result, Kevin Hollinrake, the Tory chair, says, the last leaf has fallen from the Greens' withering tree. Well, he can talk about withering trees when it comes to the Tory party, which is set to be eviscerated and not before time. While the Greens indulge in extreme left-wing fantasies and failed socialist economics, only the Conservatives are committed to real stewardship of nature. Well, in my experience, the Conservatives have been anything but committed to the stewardship of nature. The iconoclast Thatcher did her best to rip up as many environmental regulations as she possibly could. Labour have attacked Polanski on another front for not being committed to remaining in NATO. A really particularly stupid statement from Ellie Reeves, the Labour Party chairperson. We are living through serious times. Oh, serious times, are they, Ellie? And the public rightly expect responsible and measured responses from all political leaders, like spending £50 billion on useless nuclear weapons, cutting benefits to disabled people, and supporting genocide. Those are the measured responses, are they, Ellie? Because that's what your government have been doing. Zach Polanski must level with the British people, she said, as to whether he stands by his recent failure to support continued NATO membership and what it means for his party's stance on Putin's appalling illegal war in Ukraine. All the usual cliches. Here is Zach Polanski at his press conference this morning, courtesy of the BBC.
Would you rule out, in a hung parliament situation, working with Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party?
It would be wild to rule out working with anyone at this point, because I've only just been elected leader, and that's a decision that the membership will make. I'll give my opinion as it is today, with the kind of caveat that opinions can change as things work on. In Keir Starmer, we've seen someone who got elected on the coattails of Jeremy Corbyn, who made lots of promises to protect communities, to bring about a left-wing change in this country, to stand up for some of the poorest communities. And what we've had in Keir Starmer is despicable in terms of the politics. It is someone who has sold those communities out. He's not just sold his party out and the people who voted for him. The people I'm more concerned about are the people that are suffering in this country every day, who are worried about the future of this country, who see Nigel Farage give, and let's call it what it is, a racist press conference, and not just not condemn it, but implicitly nod to it. So I can't imagine any scenario where I would want to work with Keir Starmer. And I think in a scenario where we were in a hung parliament and we got that many seats, I think it would be odd that if that many people had stopped voting Labour and switched to Green to then work with Keir Starmer. So I think you can clearly hear from my answer how I feel about that.
Polanski has also said it's a no-brainer to nationalise public industries. He said Labour are terrified of nationalising water companies and that's a problem. Steel, he said, is also an obvious candidate for nationalisation, and he accused Labour of being unwilling to work with steel workers on a net transition to net zero. Well, I'm not so sure about all that, but certainly when it comes to nationalising water, I would actually say electricity and the railways are long since overdue. British people have been swindled out of their national assets, and we all pay far too much as a result. Here he is again in another segment.
But I think parties don't need to be explicitly working together necessarily to keep working together on policies, to keep putting a vision towards the country. And to give you an example, I spoke to Jeremy yesterday. He's having a Gaza inquiry later on this week. Now, many of you will remember the Chilcot inquiry over Iraq. Jeremy Corbyn and various MPs have been supporting the idea of a Gaza inquiry, so a live-streamed inquiry where everyone can see evidence about what is happening. We don't need to be in the same party for me to support that. We don't even need to be allies, quote unquote, for me to support that. What I see is a politician who is doing strong principled work that aligns with the things I care about and the party cares about. And I think that's a different and new kind of politics. And I think that's a politics that's really going to excite this country.
It remains to be seen what kind of alliance, formal or otherwise, Zelensky forges with the new Your Party, or indeed with the Workers' Party of Britain. The Green Party stood against Liane Mohammed in West Streeting's constituency in the last election. And had they not stood, there's every reason to believe that Liane Mohammed would have beaten the man described hilariously by Alexei Sayle as Keir Starmer's illegitimate love child, made of margarine. I'm talking, of course, about the dreadful, sweaty-faced, pusillanimous Wes Streeting, one of the worst ghouls in this absolutely awful government. Another area where where government policy has failed over many decades, of course, is housing. And the number 3 story on ascending order is again related to this government's failure. Why are they keeping 1,200 homes empty? Let's find out in this report from Sky News.
Newly built flats in a country that desperately needs them. Keys ready for people to move into their own home.
This is 99 apartments.
Estate agent Jamie has already sold dozens of them.
So this is our show home. We have 1 and 2 bedroom apartments for sale here. And the type of buyers that move in are first-time buyers, young families.
But there's a twist. Contracts exchanged, hopes raised, but the buyers still can't move in. This block was completed over a year ago, but the building safety regulator hasn't signed it off.
The carpets are down. The couple who bought this, they worked really hard to save for their deposit. 14 months they've been waiting to move in because the building safety regulator never tell us when they're going to sign the paperwork off.
After the Grenfell Tower fire claimed 70 lives, a new building safety regulator, the BSR, was set up to ensure high-rise developers don't cut corners and risk safety. But 2 years on, and it's causing its own problems.
So what I've seen, there's nothing apparent that is going to cause a building any real issues. As an example, signage has been 2 millimetres too small to sign off. And so the developer has to change all the signage, which is fine, but at 2 millimetres to cause a 14-month delay, it just doesn't make sense.
This block is not the only one affected by the regulator's delays. Sky News has discovered there are still 1,210 completed homes waiting for the BSR to sign them off. And it's not only finished buildings that are at the mercy of the new safety regulator.
Following the Grenfell fire, nobody wants to be seen on the side of high-rise property developers. But if we're going to meet the 1.5 million new homes target, they're going to have to be built. And what's clear is this government is overseeing a system of regulating that building that's just not fit for purpose. So what are you going to build here?
So we've got planning for 352 apartments, and 166 of those homes will be for social rented housing.
This site in South London should be in full swing by now, but it and tens of thousands of other homes are still hanging on months delayed approval.
We currently have 3 applications. The current dates that we're looking at that they've given us, one is 6 months, one is 9 months, and one is 12 months. We have tens of millions of pounds tied up in the 3 sites.
This government is desperate to build houses. This doesn't sound like it's helping.
No, definitely not, Sam.
New buildings should be signed off within 12 weeks, but Sky News can reveal that the percentage of applications determined inside this period is falling from 47% at the end of September to 32% by the end of March, and the backlog is growing faster than the BSR can tackle its cases. In a statement to Sky News, the BSR said setting up the new safety body has been complex and huge progress has been made. They are now working closely with industry to deliver safer, higher quality buildings. But the BSR also point the finger at developers, blaming the quality of their applications, a claim vigorously contested by the industry. Ultimately, the BSR is a branch of government, and housing bosses think it's ministers who should carry the can, while the regulator itself has been given a hospital pass. Without a fix, Keir Starmer's housing target looks harder by the day. Sam Coates, Sky News, Greenwich.
That looks like brownfield site there in South London. I'm all in favour of building on brownfield sites in existing urban areas. This government seemed to want to tear up the planning book altogether and build all over the remaining green fields of England to support a population rising for one reason only, and that, of course, is immigration. Meanwhile, fourth story on ascending order today, our infrastructure is crumbling. The government is not providing the necessary cash to maintain public services, as we can hear now in this report from Sky News.
As the new term begins, across the UK, schools are stepping into roles far beyond teaching, be it through food banks, supporting families facing housing instability. Some are even mediating conflicts online and resolving parking issues. But school leaders are saying this should not be their role.
The core business of a school is to be a place of academic study, to teach the children the curriculum so that they get the very best outcomes and that they can enter the world of work or adulthood well prepared.
In the report, the Association of School and College Leaders clarify which services schools might reasonably offer, provided they receive adequate funding and resources. But some say there's still a definite need.
Am I ever going to ignore a hungry child or a dirty child or somebody's going, no, of course I'm not. And so if not us, then who, I think is the question we have to ask ourselves. That doesn't necessarily mean we're the best people to do things, because I don't think we are in lots of cases, but we're what's available.
Food banks, washing facilities and laundrettes. These are just some of the areas that schools are having to provide their local communities and children that they serve. In addition to this, where social media has played a role in causing disputes out of school hours, schools and school leaders are having to deal with the aftermath. And school leaders are now asking for clarification from the Department for Education because they need to know where their roles and responsibilities lie.
As schools are increasingly forced to shoulder social responsibilities, the calls for clearer boundaries and stronger support grows. Anjum Pier-Bakos, Sky News.
Richest man in the world, or one of them anyway, was until recently. That is, of course, if you ignore the people who hide in the shadows and own the Federal Reserve, that kind of person. But one of the most prominent anyway, and not afraid to flaunt his wealth and spend it on all kinds of nefarious activities, is, of course, Mr. Microsoft himself, Bill Gates, the master of viruses, we might call him. Well, his latest plan is to flood the world with genetically engineered mosquitoes. What could possibly go wrong? He's working with Monsanto, as we can hear now.
Hi, I'm Scott O'Neill here in Medellin, Colombia today, and I'm at the world's biggest mosquito factory for the World Mosquito Program. We're making in here 30 million mosquitoes a week. Come and have a look. We're doing it for a very serious reason. Cities like Medellin have suffered from diseases like dengue, Zika, chikungunya for decades, but not anymore. We've been able to bring the solution of Wolbachia mosquitoes to this city. When this bacteria called Wolbachia gets introduced into the mosquito, it stops their ability to transmit dengue. We release mosquitoes that have Wolbachia. Now they go and mate, and Wolbachia gets passed into the wild mosquito population. If we're going to control these diseases in all the tropical cities of the world, it's going to require a lot of mosquitoes. The mosquito life cycle starts with the egg, and in this room we've got a lot of eggs. Each one of these strips, these tiny black dots, are up to 10,000 mosquito eggs. Across all of these strips, about 1.5 million dried eggs waiting to hatch. In this tray, we've got the newly hatched eggs. They're little larvae, so small you can hardly see them. They're going to sit in here for a few days and eat and get bigger until they look like these ones over here. They're starting to turn into pupae. We're wanting to do the next step of sorting the males from the females. We want to do that so we can manipulate the sex ratio in the cages to be more female than male. The bottom ones along here are the boys, and the ones at the top are the girls. They're bigger. From here, they're going into the adult cages. We have adults that we continuously grow in what we call our brood stock. And then over here, we have the mass-produced mosquitoes getting ready to give us the eggs to go out directly into the field. It's crazy how they sound. You might wonder, what do we feed all these mosquitoes here? Well, I can tell you, we've got the good stuff in here. On the top shelf, literally, we've got the blood. They love it. Once the mosquitoes are grown, they're ready to go out into the field.
Extraordinary stuff. Let's hope it works. What could possibly go wrong than breeding billions of mosquitoes? That's Bill Gates for you. Finally today, no sign of Frank Romano, unfortunately. He's out there somewhere off the coast of Spain. Bad weather delayed the launch of the global Samud Flotilla by about 48 hours, but they are on their way now. I believe they set off first thing this morning. 50 boats. Are the Israelis really going to board 50 boats with commandos, steal the boats, and throw all the people on them, including famous actors like Susan Sarandon and Liam Cunningham, in terrorist cells, denying them all privileges? Are they going to torture them like they do the Palestinian prisoners? The corporate media did their best to ignore the Greta Thunberg original mission, and indeed the one that Frank was on, the Hamdallah. Fox News appallingly describing it as a selfie yacht. Piers Morgan likewise seemed to think it was funny that people are trying to stop others being starved to death. I don't see anything funny in it at all. Something else that isn't very funny is what's been happening at Burning Man this year. I've never been there myself. Far too hot for me. It is supposed to be quite a spectacular, but this year it's been more akin to Glastonbury, as we can hear now in this report.
Oh boy, we're getting some more rain.
This year's edition of the Burning Man Festival is officially doomed. First, on opening weekend, a massive sandstorm destroyed hundreds of tents, tore apart shade structures,
You will see the havoc, the destruction,
and severely damaged multiple art installations. The dust had barely settled when the next disaster struck upon the festival. Not one, but multiple heavy rainstorms, turning the playa into a miserable pool of mud.
Uh-oh, this is not good.
On Sunday evening, roughly 24 hours after the dust storm, heavy rain swept over Black Rock City, transforming the flat desert floor into something entirely different. Unlike most places, this Nevada desert has no natural drainage systems. It's a completely flat surface covered with alkaline dust. Out there, water doesn't drain, nor does it soak in. It mixes with the fine dust and forms a thick, clay-like mud. Within hours, the playa turned into a 7-mile wide bowl of sludge that clung to everything: shoes, tires, bikes, tents. One witness described the chaos.
So just walking the 10 feet or so over from the tent to the car, all these footprints, just look at my boots. Like, it's kind of heavy to pick my foot up. There's that much extra weight on there.
Camps that had just rebuilt after the sandstorm now faced a new battle, keeping their shelters dry as water seeped in through every gap. The next night, as more rain fell in sheets and puddles spread across the city, the danger almost turned deadly. A man stepped into a waterlogged section of the playa and suffered a suspected electrocution. First responders suspected lightning struck the victim, but further reports discovered electrical equipment had been running nearby. When the standing water became energized, the man collapsed instantly. Emergency crews rushed to his side and airlifted him to a trauma center outside the desert. The shocking incident led organizers to issue urgent warnings. As more rain fell from the sky, elevate your gear, keep generators out of puddles, tape off your cords, and under no circumstances walk barefoot in the water. The festival's mantra of self-reliance can mean life or death when weather changes the rules of the game. For everyone else, the rain left misery in its wake. Playa mud doesn't brush off. It sticks like cement to everything.
Check it out. I got like 10 pounds on each foot of mud. Check this out, baby. OMG.
Boots gained several kilos of extra weight. Bikes, normally the main way to get around the 7-mile-wide city, became nothing more than dead weight. The playa got filled with left-behind bikes as attendants restored to their final means of transportation, walking.
What is actually happening?
With the desert sand turned to a sandy slushy, organizers had to shut down almost all amenities.
All the activities are shut down. We all slept all night with no house music bumping. Everything stopped because of that. It's horrible.
Inside tents and RVS, the mud tracked everywhere. On sleeping bags, in cooking spaces, across the floor of art cars. One longtime burner said, "We thought the dust was bad, but this just followed us everywhere. It's in my bed, it's on my clothes, there's no escape." Another gave up after 10 burns. "I quit. This year broke me. It wasn't fun, it was survival." The weather only added to the sense of exhaustion. Days were already cool under cloud cover, and once the sun went down, the desert plunged into its typical chill. Nights turned bone cold with damp clothes and wet bedding. Festival goers, many used to wearing as little as possible in the daytime heat, now shivered in jackets and makeshift rain gear. Illness became a constant worry. People spoke of friends coughing, sniffling, and heading home early rather than face more nights of rain-soaked cold. The infamous Orgy Dome, already damaged in the earlier dust storm, got destroyed again by the heavy rain and had to close for good.
So here's the deal. The rain is destroying demonic activity. Because of the rain, the orgy tent was destroyed.
The misery extended to the airport as well. Dozens of small planes were grounded, with only emergency flights allowed in or out. Some operations resumed by Monday, but the mud trapped more than just planes. Whenever extreme weather hits, the festival gates are forced to close. During the dust storm, this led to an immense pile-up of festival goers waiting to get in. A 5-hour wait turned into 15 hours for thousands.
I love people.
And with dust blowing in through every crack, many were completely unprepared and had to sit through a real-life nightmare. Then came the rain, and the gates closed once again. The access road turned unstable, swallowing wheels and dragging down anything that wasn't a heavy-duty truck. Smaller cars and RVs stood no chance. Once the tyres dug in, they were stuck for good. Organisers urged drivers to hold back, to wait until the surface dried enough to make it safely across. Of course, plenty tried anyway. Vehicles buried themselves axle deep, wheels spinning helplessly. One by one they had to be pulled out, rescued by bystanders. For many, the conditions were too much. Social media filled with complaints, photos of mud-caked feet, and frustrated posts announcing early departures. Others stayed, determined to push through. But even veterans admitted this was one of the most difficult burns they had ever faced.
All right, this is Pele Bunny reporting live from Burning Man.
I think we need to get the fuck out of here. Look at the dust in here. It's dustier inside this bus than outside.
Another Burning Man mantra is, leave no trace behind. Unfortunately, although this is mostly respected during normal editions, the extreme weather conditions left some people with little or no choice. Trash was lost or dumped, entire cars broke down, burned out and were abandoned. This year's edition of Burning Man undoubtedly left a sour aftertaste for many attendees. Is a $550 ticket really worth it? Will this be my final?
Very easy to indulge in Schadenfreude. As I say, I've never been, but much more like Glastonbury. That's it for Ascending Order for today. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow with filmmaker Jackie Dehoy. I do hope Frank Romano is safe out there. He's somewhere off the coast of Spain, sailing to Gaza. We'll be keeping a close eye on that story and anything else of global significance. See you all again at the same time tomorrow. Unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented TV.